Okay.
So here we are again for season 3. Can you believe we made it that far of the Turkish Diplomats, which is myself, Calvin Roach, and Paul Hogue. And you're listening to Charming Noise. I'm not going to tell you why we are the Turkish Diplomats because it's become a mystery in Turkey who the hell we are. So, what we do is we watch bad movies, really bad movies, so that you don't have to. And tonight's selection, Empire of the Ants. It was what, 1977, Calvin?
1977.
And our theme for this season is drive-in movie masterpieces. And this one here had so many surprises for me. I can't believe I had not seen it before.
I saw it as a double feature with Kingdom of the Spiders, which came out that same year, which had William Shatner in it.
Ooh, then you're gonna, yeah. This had some surprises in it for me. My choice had a surprise for me because I didn't know the actors that were in it. But that's another show.
There's a ton of B-movie character actors in this movie.
It's
like 100 movies each.
And it's like they're like all these people who are just picked to be background characters on Love Boat, basically.
I was about to say that.
Well, what I was thinking was because
the Love Boat stars.
That's pretty good. Actually, some of them I think were Love Boat.
Almost every one of them.
Wow. And I don't want to jump ahead. Of course I do. But and you can kind of Calvin, you I think pick this, so I guess you'll be on. But I will point out that if you're looking for a fast-moving story, at one point near the end, it does, because it just handles everything that should have been handled over the previous 80 minutes of film in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Literally, shit does not happen for the first 37 minutes of this 90-minute film. It's just these people talking. And after a while, now kind of going with the Love Boat thing, what I was thinking was, well, this sounds like if you start playing the Sims game and you just leave it on and you walk around town and you hear like this nonsensical conversation going on, these non-playing characters that just kind of say weird ass shit. That's what all the conversations sounded like.
Yeah.
Well, first off, again, this is Empire of the Ants, 1977, a drive-in masterpiece. And I think truly this is a masterpiece because it was masterfully done. The effects on it were, for the time being, 1977, they were top rate.
Yeah.
It's all based on H.G. Wells' Empire of the Ants story.
Well, actually, it's Food of the Gods.
Or Food of the Gods. And it looked absolutely nothing like this story.
Here's a bit of trivia for you. The same director directed Food of the Gods the year before.
Oh, my goodness. We might have to watch
another H.G. Wells movie. And he said they were H.G. Wells books, but he took great liberties with the story.
They left out the words loosely based upon before they put stories of H.G. Wells.
Loosely based like sleeve of wizard.
Like Tom mentioned the special effects. So let's, like, okay, here's the special effects from this movie. And that same summer, we have Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's right on par with that. It's right on par with Star Wars. It really is.
Yeah, it's not industrial light and magic. It's like fast food light and magic.
Fast food light and magic. So, Calvin, since
Yes.
this is the one that you chose, give us the plot.
Okay, well, essentially, Joan Collins' character and her husband are real estate hucksters, who are luring people down to like this actual swamp land in Florida. I think it's Florida, to get people to buy lots in this future development they're gonna put in for, so condominiums or whatever. Well, they know it's a scam. Her husband knows it's a scam. And they're the people.
I wasn't sure about that. They've got some kind of connection for sure.
Yeah. But anyway,
I honestly thought that they were going to an island somewhere.
Well, yeah, it is kind of an island, but it's like I said, it was Sunshine, Dreamland, something. They were gonna sell them housing lots essentially.
Apparently, it's on like a peninsula.
Yeah, there we go, an archipelago. So, I mean, things start to go pretty.
Well, the archipelago went.
I mean, there's really not much to say about the plot because that's it. Lure these people down here, give them cheap booze, talk them into buying plots of land that are worthless, and run away with the money. And that's essentially what the whole thing is. But somehow things go awry when radioactive waste being dumped offshore comes ashore and ants feed on it.
And they're feeding on mercury, what looked like
That's what I think it was. It was either mercury or like really thick silver paint, but I think it may have been mercury. You're right.
They might, for safety's sake, they might have used gallium, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, mercury being that much safer than radioactive waste. But it did bring to mind back when they were actually dumping radioactive waste in the ocean. I do remember them doing that in the 70s.
Yeah.
But so they show up, they get down to this boat, and it's almost like a Gilligan's Island looking, ship. And the captain of the ship, Dan, and Joan Collins, they do not have a good working relationship. I mean, she basically just keeps lording it over him that I'm writing your paychecks. So do what I say, shit like that. And he resents her. It's obvious. And then, like Paul said, the people just kind of aimlessly talking. People just begin talking about the sad things in their lives. Like this one lady I worked for a man for 20 years, and they just cut me loose with severance. Not even a thank you. And one guy was like, well, I'm here because my wife kicked me out. Like, she kept the kid.
You talking about the young guy?
Yeah.
This is what one of the things that got at me is, they did the backstory of most all of these characters, the old couple, the Thurston Howell and his wife or whatever they were.
Oh my God, I hadn't thought about that, how it was pretty much Gilligan's Island with a few non-playing characters, basically.
Yeah. And you got a little bit of all of them, and then you get to this young guy who I would say was maybe 22, 23.
Yeah.
And you could tell he was there just to kind of get a free meal and some free booze.
Yeah.
He had the most in-depth, depressing backstory of all of them. It's like he had lived more in a week than they had in their entire lives.
But there's like this inane, pointless dialogue where it had nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah.
Then of course they get on their little tram and they take off on a little trail ride through the forest, and Joan Collins has her bullhorn, talking the place up.
4 feet away from the furthest person.
Yeah.
A bullhorn that's blasting away everything.
There's this one couple, and the husband, he's writing down how much he thinks everything costs because he thinks it's a ripoff and a fraud. Well, at one point, he runs into the forest and pulls up a PVC pipe that's not connected to water.
It's supposed to look like water and sewer connections.
Yeah, yeah.
Flunk, flunk.
And he's like, "See, I told you, the fraud." And I think weren't they the first victims of the ants?
Yeah, the Lawsons, which
Yeah.
they literally they're the only characters that had not spoken at all.
Right. We didn't have any of their dialogue or backstory.
I don't even remember seeing them originally. They must have been on there because there were 9 people.
Yeah, they were there. And like right at the very beginning, he's talking about, oh, this is cheap scotch in a pretty bottle kind of stuff, And so she and the wife was like, "Oh, just relax and have fun," And the old couple was like, "Well, we just like touring these things. We don't buy anything. We just enjoy driving around and seeing all these things. For the free vacations, And but then at some point, the story kicks in, and people begin being attacked by giant paper mache ants.
37 minutes into
37 minutes.
I was checking.
And it happened to be our favorite non-backstory couple. Who it took me like 5 kills before I realized that not only were the people screaming, so were the ants.
Yeah.
That was so I wasn't sure if there were always I thought they were going to try to build up the idea that maybe the ants kept some of the people, that they were, instead of killing them, they were just like chewing on them while they were alive, and that's why they were screaming. And then I was like, no, they just have random people scream whenever they point the camera at the ants.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when they would point the camera at the ants, they would just stand there and scream instead of running,
And I love the way that they kind of kept a consistency with the ants. These ants were, big giant ants with coconut husk fur all over their face.
Exactly. And the whole ant special effect thing that weren't practical effects, like the giant paper mache ants, they were just close-ups of ants being ants superimposed on a blue screen.
Yeah, it was some specific ant because it's a fairly large ant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just, and they just superimposed this, like this National Geographic or Walt Disney, stock ant footage.
Yeah, I think they were shooting like carpenter ants, and they were doing it through like an ant farm, like you would get offline.
It looked like an ant farm. They had made the tiny little buildings and stuff. And there's one scene though where there's supposed to be like this massive colony of them. And I noticed there were 2 different species of ants there.
Yeah.
And they were fighting each other, but obviously
radioactive mercury does, man. I mean, first of all, it grows your ant to tremendous sizes within days, and then converts an entire town into a sugar meth lab, pretty much.
I think that's when the whole thing takes this left turn that nobody sees coming.
I did not.
No, because I actually
hadn't figured out that they would do this until they'd already shot like 70, 80 minutes of footage.
I'd forgotten all about this part, how it turned out, because they finally only like 5 people get out alive, and it's the ship's captain, the pretty girl next door, the older lady,
Millionaire and his wife.
And one other person.
The guy who was basically Gilligan, the best friend of the skipper or whatever.
Yeah. So they finally get out. The sheriff, they get taken out of picked up by the sheriff, and you're like, giant ants. That's kind of far fetched. I'll take some deputies in later to take a look around. And when they
want to back up just a second.
Go ahead.
Because my favorite line in the whole movie, after they had left the tram, and the youngest couple in here, which I thought was weird. I couldn't figure out why they did.
Hooking up in this thing.
They were hooking up, basically. Yeah.
And they just separate from the crowd. People have been openly murdered by giant ants in front of them, and they decide they're going to leave the group, so they're gone. And then they all start getting chased by ants everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're pushing them towards the river, and they get to the boat that's like 2 miles away, and they're going to go upriver and find help.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get to the boat, they all looking around, and somebody I think it was Joe, the young guy, or no, it was the woman's husband who was cranky about everything.
Oh, yeah.
He died shortly after. But he goes, "Welp, we lost the old couple." So casually.
No, the reason they lost them was they were busting ass running through the jungle while they're simulating a rainstorm, sometimes in sunlight with garden hoses, spraying water on it. And they pass, because at one point, Joan Collins and her guy that works with her, that might be her significant other, she decides, oh, we're going in this building over here. And they go in the building, and the ants are waiting for them. So they haul ass out of that building. And when they do, they manage to catch up with the group. It's a comedy bit almost. And they pass the old couple, and nobody looks, and everybody kind of picks up speed at that point. And and that's when and finally the old couple is like, well, we're going over here, and they found the shack, and they go in the shack, and they're okay overnight. And when they wake up, see, I told you we'd be okay. And the second they step out,
900 ants surround
900 ants, and they start screaming. And to me, that was the funniest part of the movie.
Well, when there's that point when they get in the boat, and the ants have choked off both the escape routes by water by throwing in logs and stuff.
Yeah.
And at one point they get back on shore, and they're like, what are we gonna do? They're herding us like cattle.
Second favorite line.
Yeah. And
she was very dramatic about that
line. And so there are, even the professional actors in this sucked.
Well, I blame a lot of this, and it's a problem that I have seen many, many times in movies, is editing. If they had just tightened up the editing on this, because it was like she would go, the conversation when they were going downriver, they're hurting us like cattle. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats. I did see her fall. I saw my wife fall. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats. And then the next line's delivered, and you're going, just tighten it up a little bit.
Well, I mean, like when the sad sack young guy is getting all these people are coming up to him, and even though they're not drinking any less than he is, they all picked him out as an alcoholic right away. And it's like, how many more people do you need to come up and provide that bit of exposition? Get it. He drinks a lot. Doesn't look like it, but according to you, he apparently is the drunk who just shows up on the boat.
But once the sheriff gives them a ride into town, the sheriff says, we'll put you up at our finest motel. Apparently the mayor is also the innkeeper. And the mayor's on the phone demanding more sugar. More sugar. Don't deliver me that sugar. All the time. We're like, but okay. Because earlier, this old lady had told them to don't let them take you to the sugar mill.
Yeah.
She whispered it to the pretty girl. And they're like, oh, okay, whatever. But then they find out that the sheriff has not taken any deputies out to look for these things. For some reason, they can't rent a car because it's just procedure. We can't let you have one until tomorrow. And it's just one thing I'd rather kind of stonewalling them. And they realize something's not right. The hot wire car, and they leave town, and suddenly it looks like Smokey and the Bandit. There's 100 cop cars in front of them.
Then
I'll give him credit. The dude could drive.
And then the guy just throws his car into a drainage ditch.
And that was kind of a great catch on film, honestly.
Yeah.
Flying up. I like that.
And so they drag him back and they take him into the sheriff's car and they take him to the sugar mill. Whereas they're being pushed along by this one extra who's playing with the deputies is literally the short guy lurching along like Igor, pushing him around with a shotgun. And you see a tractor go by pulling trailers full of people.
And you kind of go, huh, this is different.
And they go by one of the places where they're just like shooting sugar into a huge pile outside this building. They're like, we make enough here to feed a small country every day or whatever, And they get inside and up these ladders, and the sheriff, the guy playing the sheriff has been a sheriff in every fucking 70s movie ever.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, it's all he knew how to be was a cop. And so they're standing in line, and the sheriff's just telling them all, well, this is what they take care of us, we take care of them. We serve them. We are happy to serve them. And they put them in the front of the line so they can see the poorer people of this town who are put in a booth where the queen ant sprays some kind of gas on them, because they tell you the first of the movie how they're obligated to obey the queen because of pheromones.
You call that shotgunning,
Yeah, we do, yeah. And so these people go in there. You can see they don't want to go in there. Then they get the squirt of happy pheromone in their face, and they just walk out blank, And Joan Collins is the first of our hapless bunch who gets thrown in there, and she's happy. She's happy to serve the queen now, but
it's the first time she's been pleasant in the entire film.
Oh yeah. But when it comes time to put Captain Dan in there, he's hidden on his person road flares he got out of the car. I forgot about those. And so just before the queen sprays him with the stuff, he strikes off the road flares and sets her on fire. And people begin panicking.
Which you think they could have done since the queen was trapped in a glass container,
Yeah, it's they got a name for it now. It's like a shotgun booth, basically, where she sprays her pheromones. They go through a screen. They land on you. All you would have to do is substitute that for a giant bong with a bucket that's placed on your head, and somebody blows smoke in your face.
And a guy is outside, and he's holding like small bags of Doritos and red.
So it would, just substitute pheromones with weed, and you've got a Cheech and Chong film right there.
You really do. And, and of course, the people are realizing now that the queen is on fire, the spell is broken, and the sheriff stands there weeping, oh my God, what have I done? And starts shooting the queen with his pistol. And as the people are leaving this chamber, these ginormous ants are crawling all over the sugar mill. And I kind of lost interest in it at this point. By this point, I thought I'm close enough to the end. I can almost stop watching it. But in typical fashion, 70s movie fashion, they just ended off with a long shot as it pulls back and the music swells up, and then the image freezes while the music keeps playing. And it's just like every other bad schlocky movie after that.
It looked like the end of Gator or any other movie made in Florida at that
It did. Oh my God, it did.
going down the,
Yeah.
Acapulco, wherever.
I mean, I realized that I probably didn't give the best synopsis, but there's not much to synopsize.
That's pretty much it right there.
Yeah, that was the whole movie. Yeah.
And here's a happy bit of trivia that I told Tom. I laughed and I thought I couldn't breathe. Was at the end of the filming, the audio guy and the director
I read that.
have a fight, and the audio guy throws all the tapes in the water, just launches them into the swamp. So every bit of dialogue in this movie is looped.
Which I gotta say, I'm slightly suspicious. Well, one, I'm very suspicious of that story because I could see that happening because I heard that what's his name? What's his name that directed this?
Bert I. Gordon. Bert I. Gordon.
Which is a weird name.
Birdie
I. Gordon. You know, a lot of bad movies, especially like the Italians, they shot everything silently and looped everything in.
Yeah,
Because that way they could quickly change languages depending on what country they were showing it in. So I think it's possible they could have looped it and that story but at the same time, I can kind of see it happening. That's for sure.
So
I got a little bit of trivia.
Okay, lay it on me.
And I wanted to mention a couple of things too. And it's another one of these things that should have been really important to the movie and wasn't, was about 20 minutes in while they were still on the beach having this party, one of the guys who was, his character's name was Larry. Larry basically gets the red-haired girl off to the side, and he attempts to rape her.
He does.
I mean, just outright, and she, I think, knees him in the nuts or something like that. And Joan Collins walks up, and then they act like it never happened.
They act like it never happened. You're right.
She starts like hitting on the drunk younger guy.
Yeah.
And it's the weird, it's like, it's like, I guess different time. But anyway, Larry is married to a character named Christine, who looks about a good 15 years younger than he is. Younger. She's very pretty too, and she dies. She's like gets him down to like 6 or 7, I think. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And
we saw her trip.
Yeah. And it spends like 3 minutes of Larry going, I don't know if, should I go? I don't know if, and then he leaves her.
And then when they're in the boat, he's like, I saw her trip.
Yeah, nobody said you didn't see her trip, man. What are you talking about?
I didn't just abandon her. You wouldn't. Why are you looking at me like you think I would? And you just told us you did, you son of a bitch.
Well, Christine was played by Brooke Palance. One of Jack Palance's daughters.
Right. Yes.
And she ended up only doing like 4 or 5 movies and a short-lived television series her dad did, and basically really did not care for acting at all. In fact, she was on some assignment on something, and they had her dressed out, as for this small bit piece, and they were on, I can't remember where they had gone, but it was some nice island somewhere. And finally she's like, I don't want to act anyway. I'm just going to take tomorrow off. And that was pretty much it for her acting career.
Yeah. I saw her name pop up there, and I went and looked looked up, some of her history. But most of the people, like you said earlier, they were just nobodies. I mean, the guy playing the captain, you saw him in a lot of stuff in the 70s.
Oh yeah, he was like in Mannix and I think MASH, and it seems like though he was blonde-headed in the latter part of his career.
I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think you're
I
right.
don't remember that, but yeah, he was on Love Boat, I'm sure. And
The guy playing Larry was on, I think, on Love Boat.
Yeah.
In fact, most of this cast was on Love Boat at some point or other, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure Joan Collins was, because it was right after this. Wasn't it Dallas that she was on right after this?
Dallas or Dynasty or something like that. She
I
became the big
those.
TV vixen of the 70s.
She was, yeah. She became like she was tabloid front page news all the time.
Yeah.
When you're standing in the supermarket line, you see Joan Collins' face right there,
And for our younger viewers, by tabloid, he means the National Enquirer, which was just a magazine that made up shit just like our president.
The Weekly World News was one of the worst offenders for making stuff up, and you can still find them online, and they're happily making stuff up because they know people expect it now. Now they're the creators of Bat Boy.
Yeah, I love Bat Boy.
Here's a bit of trivia about them. They made a bit of a scandal on their own because they stole one of National Enquirer's stories and ran it.
They did, you're right.
Which is kind of great because you have to go prove that in court. And they're like, well, how do you prove an untrue story to begin with?
Yeah.
I will say also that I had to watch, I actually watched the wrong movie first.
Oh yeah?
I watched, I thought it was a one of those step family porn movies called Empire of the Aunts, which is totally
when I started watching this and realized it was in color, I for a second thought that it was the wrong movie because our last drive-in movie was in black and white.
Yeah.
While I was watching this movie, another movie occurred to me that we could have watched that's not about a giant bugs, but remember the frogs?
That's the one I was going to suggest for next episode.
Excellent. Perfect. Yeah, but perfect. Has a young Sam Shepard in it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He is.
Yeah.
Darker than a cow's took us. That guy, Marlboro Man.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you're picking that movie because otherwise I was going to beg to pick the next one and that would be it.
No, a lot of these, I've noticed that a lot of these Burt I. Gordon movies, they all have pretty much the same poster.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
Creature, really big, and then lady underneath.
Yeah, they do.
Because Food of the Gods, exact same poster, except she's flipped over and you see a little more.
Yeah. In Food of the Gods, you get more than just giant ants, though. You get giant everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably the only PG rated movie someone can shout, "Look at the size of that cock" and get away with it. In fact, there's a giant cock in the trailer for that movie. So there you go.
I think the same thing was in Empire of the Aunts.
Of course, this is terrible. I spent last weekend in the hospital. It turns out I have a mild case of sepsis. And the doctor told me that the first thing in my head was, "No sepsis, what are you doing?"
I know. I was looking it up and hit the wrong word. And
there's a whole niche out there of that stuff.
We are under a minute, by the way.
Okay, so
thank God.
While we're under a minute, I'm going to tell y'all thank you again for joining us on our quest to bring you this PSA about what not to watch. Catch us on all of our platforms. Podbean is our home. You catch us on YouTube, 1,000 different other places. We're also moving post, you're going to be seeing us on 3 or 4 more new places, including the Shaoshu or whatever it is from China.
China? What in tarnation? Well, I guess we won't find out until the next episode of the Turkish Diplomats present Charming Noise.